Is our global economy heading or in a growth recession?
Hi, Tom, and thanks for inviting me. The global economy is paying a very hefty price for the war that Russia is leading into Ukraine. And yes, this is pushing down growth quite a lot to 3%, as you say, which is just about one of the low rates we have seen. And it's pushing inflation even higher. We're getting close to 9% or a little more than 6% if we're excluding Turkey in the OECD economies.
Do you ascribe to the idea that the only way to break Laurence Summers stagflation, the only way to break this, given the war and given the rest, is tight monetary policy? Is that the only way you get this done?
So I think we have a little more messages than this in there. And as far as monetary policy is concerned, we have, still healthy growth, employment, and high inflation. So what we're saying is remove some monetary policy accommodation. Monetary policy, as you very well know, cannot address supply shock, but they can signal that they will target this, by telegraphing what they're doing. And in those countries where there is obvious excess demand, then yes, monetary policy should be tighter.
Laurence, what's the main swing factor that led to the downgrade and that could potentially lead to more downgrades ahead?
So the main swing factor is really Russia's aggression into Ukraine. As you know, we were already having inflation going up because of the pandemic and the issue with China's supply chain and zero COVID policy. So that was already affecting us. Now, the disruptions and the cut to the production of cereals, of energy coming out of the war is obviously raising inflation. And this higher inflation is undermining consumer confidence and therefore consumption. One of the things we say, if you allow me just a 30-second sentence on this, is that the burden of inflation, the cost of the war, should be fairly shared between employers and employees, wages and profits, so as to avoid a wage price spiral.
So this is one of the reasons why perhaps you accuse the United Kingdom of having taxes that were too high and saying that they had to cut them in order to give people more buying power. How much does there have to be, in some ways, fiscal expansion, despite the idea that people are pointing to some of the fiscal expenditures as being the cause of inflation?
Well, there are several reasons why the UK has lower growth than other G7 economies next year. One is the higher inflation. The other is tighter and faster monetary policy tightening, and also faster fiscal consolidation. So what we're recommending to the UK is actually to consider the pace at which fiscal consolidation is taking place if growth was too slow as fast as what we're describing.
Laurence, the OEEC is part of the alphabet soup of the OECD, are the people that actually prosecuted the Marshall Plan. How do you respond when we hear so many people in a flippant way say what we need is a new Marshall Plan on Ukraine and the rest as well? How does OECD and you actually feel we will affect a modern Marshall Plan?
So I think there are two things. One is what's happening in Ukraine, where, as we can see, everything is being destroyed, all the infrastructure, and so a large part of the infrastructure and the capacity, the productive capacity of the economy, and this will need to be rebuilt. The Marshall Plan goes hand in hand, as you very well know, Tom, money on the one side, but also reform, structural policy reform on the other hand, to ensure that the money is very well channeled. So that's one thing. The other thing I think people have in mind more immediately at the moment, and that we have in mind at least, is globally to avoid a food crisis. And for this, we're just saying a couple of things. One is ensure the transport and logistics of the cereals around the world so that it reaches Middle East and Africa, where it's most needed, where it could cause not only starvation, but also social and political unrest. And for this, we might need more foreign aid, which in a sense is also part of what we call Marshall plans.
Laurence, you've got a whole host of policy prescriptions, and I just wanted to finish on the UK because you do offer some advice to the British government. Out of the developed economies at the moment, that's the one that seems to be really fighting with low growth and much higher prices in a much more pronounced way than, say, the United States or Europe for that matter. Can you run us through your thoughts on what you think this government should do right now?
I can try. What makes the UK different from other G7 economies? As I was saying, higher inflation, faster tightening of monetary policy, but also faster fiscal consolidation. And then the disruption to manufacturing supply chain, as we know, between China and some of the Brexit discussions. So there are two things, I think, which stand out. One is to carefully weigh what's happening with fiscal policy and make sure that not only the most vulnerable, but the working class just above the most vulnerable is actually being sheltered from the cost of war. And the rise in global oil prices is affecting everyone, as we know. And the second thing that we're saying is obviously trade has to resume faster in the UK.